since going into the details on these matters would take far too long. In the present context, it is only possible to briefly enumerate them. One of the key operative principles in the socialist alternative is concerned with planning, in the proper sense of the term, as opposed to its unviable post festum varieties under the now prevailing socio-historical conditions. It is necessary to add to that vital concern some equally important issues directly connected with a number of socialist orienting principles that must become deeply rooted in order to supersede capital's wasteful reproductive order by labor's hegemonic alternative. These concerns can be recognized in the often unrealistically treated relationship between scarcity and abundance, as well as in the way in which the category of qualitatively defined real human need is tendentiously confused with a capitalistically convenient artificial appetites, which can be manipulatively imposed on the individuals in the service of commodity production. In the same context, it is also important to critically examine the valid criteria of really sustainable productive economy, inseparable from the meaningful and absolutely necessary demand for economizing, the original meaning of economy. Crucial also in relation to the question of overcoming scarcity, together with the long-standing socialist advocacy of managing the societal reproduction process in accordance with qualitative criteria of disposable time, in contrast to capital's wasteful and irresponsible self-expansionary drive, blindly pursued no matter how dangerous the consequences of uncontrollable capital expansion imposed on society in the name of quasi-mythical growth, and their relationship to the system's quantifying and necessarily constraining reified time accountancy. Obviously, the successful operation of the required orienting principle of production and distribution in an advanced socialist order, and that principle is from each according to their abilities to each according to their needs. This is inconceivable without the conscious acceptance and active promotion of substantive equality by the social individuals. But it should be equally clear that the qualitative definition and operation of disposable time, the potential source of the real and not narrowly commodified wealth of both the new social order in general and of the rich social individuals in its Marxian sense, has a dual sense. On the one hand, it means the total disposable time of society as a whole, rationally planned and allocated to the chosen purposes, instead of being dictated by the crude economic determinations of capital's exploitative pursuit of profitable minimal time. But the other sense of disposable time is no less important. It cannot be even imagined without the fully consensual contribution of their meaningful life activity by the particular individuals. And the necessary condition of turning such potentialities into reality, of which so much else depends for making the alternative order historically sustainable, is again the conscious adoption of substantive equality by all concerned. Now, number 3. Naturally, the alternative order of society cannot be instituted without successfully negating in the real world capital's deeply entrenched mode of social metabolic reproduction. In that sense, negation is an essential part of the socialist enterprise under the prevailing historical circumstances. Indeed, in its immediate concerns, it is not simply negation, but inevitably, at the same time, the negation of the negation. For the social adversary asserts its rule in the form of negating not only the actuality, but even the most remote possibility of human emancipation. This is why the immediate task must be defined in socialist literature as the negation of the negation. However, such a negative definition of the socialist challenge is very far from being able to fulfill the historic mandate in question, because it remains dependent on to what it tries to negate. In order to succeed in the envisaged historic sense, the socialist approach must define itself in inherently positive terms. Marx made this absolutely clear when he insisted that socialism is man's positive self-consciousness, no longer mediated through the annulment of religion, just as real life is man's positive reality, no longer mediated through the annulment of private property. End of the quotation from Marx. A social order remaining dependent on the object of its negation, no matter how justified in its original historic terms, cannot offer the required scope for the rich human being whose richness is said to arise from his meaningful life activity as an inner necessity, as need, an inherently positive determination. For the negative definition of the social setting itself, in which the individuals must act on a continuing basis, would necessarily prejudge and contradict, through its own negativity, the aims and objectives which the social individuals are expected to autonomously, if freely, set themselves in an open-ended historical order. Moreover, also in general societal terms, the requirement of non-antagonistic mediation of humanity's relationship with the natural order, as well as the appropriate regulation of the cooperative interchanges of the particular social individuals among themselves, cannot be imagined in terms of the negation of the negation. The vital defining characteristic of the only viable mediating modality of the alternative historical order is self-mediation. But to postulate self-mediation in a negative way would be also a contradiction in terms. Naturally, on the basis of these important qualified conditions, it hardly needs adding that the orienting and operative principle of substantive equality is a necessary constituent of socialism as humanity's positive self-consciousness. And the fourth point, the fourth class of problems, the values necessarily inherited from capital's mode of social metabolic control, with its ferocious cultivation of whatever seems to accord with the system's practical imperative of structurally entrenched domination and subordination, are totally inadequate for the realization of the objectives of the socialist order. We could see earlier which way and to what extent the once advocated ideals like liberty, fraternity and equality, for instance, have been completely emptied of their erstwhile content in the course of capital's